Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to the Sensitive Stability BPD Live Show. For those of you who don't know me, I am your host. My name is Kevin Reynolds. I am a BPD survivor and a BPD coach. Each morning, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST, we go live here on TikTok where we talk about a different topic related to borderline personality disorder. Today, I want to talk about, thank you, Jill, good morning. I'd like to talk about what I call the BPD filter. Some people call this BPD eyes, however, that's a relatively new term of which I think is wildly misunderstood. When people say BPD eyes, sometimes they mean what I'm talking about, the BPD filter. That is our perspective of how we see things. Other times they're talking about the concept of here we go. Okay, sorry about that. The concept of our eyes going black, it's a way to describe how we have a character change, so to speak, when we are going through an episode. So I think the term is really tossed around too much. I don't think it's very clear in terms of actually what it is. So I don't like using the term BPD eyes by any means, and I think it's a terrible term for because of how misconstrued it is. So I call it the BPD filter. If you want to think of it kind of like, let's look at an air filter, right? On an air conditioning unit, you have an air filter in place for like your car, for instance. All cars have an air filter, right? The air filter keeps all of the contaminants and the crap out of the air that's about to be fed into the car, so you get clean air. The BPD filter is kind of like an air filter in our brain, except instead of it keeping out all of the contaminants and all of the terrible stuff, kind of like an air filter in our brain, except instead of it keeping out all of the contaminants and all of the terrible stuff, it can keep out all of the good stuff, right? Leaving you only with the data of which is kind of misconstrued in a contaminated fashion. So it works a little opposite than an air filter would, but that's a good way to remember it. The most common example that I give, which most of us can, thank you, Vitality, can relate to, is somebody walks up to you and says, Kevin, you look really good today. And I look at them with shock and say, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? Don't I look good every day? Are you trying to tell me I look bad normally? We take a compliment and we can completely shift it around into a complaint, into criticism, into judgment. And the filter that we have is put into place automatically, usually from a very young age. It does come from not feeling good enough. That's kind of the root of it all. If we felt good enough, we wouldn't have such a slanted perspective on everything. And that slanted perspective, that skew in reality, is causing a great deal of distress in your life. It's one of the most significant contributing factors to all of the tougher times, most significant contributing factors to all of the tougher times, to all of the tragedies. It's hard when people cannot have even a most basic conversation with you without you misconstruing it, right? It's frustrating to you. It's frustrating to everyone else. And thank you. I appreciate you all. Nice warm welcomes this morning. Sometimes I just have things that come up and I have to take a day off. It's not something I enjoy, but it's something that has to happen every once in a while. And when it does, it's usually out of my control and last minute. But thank God we have Amit here to be able to jump in, sometimes for me. Thank you, Pasha. Good to see everybody here. So we are talking about the BPD filter. This will affect your relationships. It will affect your job. It will affect your family life. It affects how you think about yourself. And it doesn't just involve what you hear. It involves what you see, what you experience, It involves your accomplishments. You might, win a certain award. It's not good enough. It wasn't first place, it was second place. You're not good enough. Instead of looking at achievements the correct way, instead of looking at the good communication, the good in your life, and that being the simple fact, we will distort it, misconstrue it, realign it, with us always being second place, with us always being not good enough. It's a very tough way to live. It isn't just about being the best. It's also about the perception of having disappointed someone. That BPD filter will get in the way there too. You think somebody isn't as happy with the job that you've done. The BPD filter will kick in. That data will be fed through the filter, and by the time it comes out the other side in your brain and you're thinking about it, you think you're going to get fired at work, when in reality it wasn't that big of a deal. You know what I mean? This type of thing, unfortunately, when it comes to something like the BPD filter, it impacts every single thought that you have. It impacts every single emotion that you are trying to manage. It impacts every relationship that you're in. It's very hard to get rid of the BPD filter because it means taking everything that you think and putting it under a new type of rigorous radar, a new type of analysis. It's frustrating and it's a little daunting. It creates a bit of a neurotic tendency when you're on the road to getting better, when you realize all of a sudden, I actually have to put everything I say and think under this radar. I can't let anything go, right? And it is frustrating in the beginning because everything needs to go underneath that extra microscope. But as you start to figure it out, as you start to sort out these differences and thoughts versus reality, when you start getting real data and stripping the emotion out of it when you're analyzing it, it becomes easier and easier. Thank you, Sophina. You know, there's only so many triggers for us, guys. There's only so many triggers. It may seem like there's infinite triggers in the world because those are surface level triggers. But when you really start categorizing everything, you'll notice that 50% of this is disrespect. I have disrespect whenever I'm at work. That's 50% of the trigger. It might have come in different forms and fashions. Thank you, Tactical. My disrespect trigger this morning could have been my coworker said something I didn't like. And then in the afternoon, it could have been my boss sent me a letter that criticized my work. And I felt disrespected both times. It didn't look like that was the trigger because one came from the boss and one was a letter and the other was some passing statement that, somebody said in jest. But when you start actually breaking it all down and getting to the root triggers, you realize that there's only about 14 to 16 or so of them. Some just to name some and rattle some off for you. Judgment, criticism, feeling disrespected, feeling compared to someone else, getting trapped thinking about future events that haven't happened yet, usually thinking that they're going to go very poorly, thinking about the past, again, usually thinking very poorly, rumination, right? Things like jealousy might be considered a trigger there. Not good enough is one of our biggest triggers. But you start to break down life's events and recognize that they really only fall into some of these categories. Once you figure out how to not worry about being judged, you no longer have the judgment trigger. And this is how we start eliminating things on our symptom map, so to say, right? Because the less judgment you feel, judgment won't be engaging with symptoms. Those symptoms that judgment used to instigate will appear less often. Good morning, Phoenix. Do men and women react differently? Do men hold back a bit better as far as reaching triggers? Well, I would say that anybody can manifest BPD or just people in general. could react the same to different stuff, but I'm sure if you did some studies specifically on gender identity and reactivity times, you'd probably find some correlations across the board. It might be different for different types of triggers. I would be prone to say off the top of my head that females would actually be less likely to react to most things. But when you have BPD though, and it's fully inflamed, all of those paradigms they feel like they go out the window for me a little bit. I've worked with a great deal of us and all types of people, all types of backgrounds, and I would say that there's no clear difference to me looking at it from the BPD perspective. I think we can all end up reacting the same way. And what you might react to, you might have a heavier disrespect trigger than I would, for instance. I mean, I had all of it very bad. That's just an example. Each one of us might react differently to the different triggers. That's very true too. By the way, I want to thank everybody who has been helping with my survey for my PhD. I have to do some research, and I'm trying to broaden the demographic scope of this. Because classically, most of the studies out there, most of the research, it's always been thought of as a white female condition. That's obviously very untrue. There are people of all ethnicities and gender of whom suffer from this. And because that isn't represented in the research as often, there's a great deal of people going unnoticed, unheard, unseen, undiagnosed, untreated, and there's no resource for them. So I really appreciate it, and just keep it coming. If you're interested in taking the survey, the more the better, for sure. Just shoot us a DM, and we'll get you the link to that. But anyway, that said, because that was a perfect question, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do. The entire point of my research has been to broaden the demographic scope of BPD, because most people don't realize that you could be anybody and get this condition. I mean, you really can. You could be anybody from any part of the world. You could look any certain way. You could identify with any gender, and you could end up with this condition. It's the truth, and it's a shame to me that there hasn't been any research on that in particular. I think that sucks. So, trying to make a dent in the universe that way. This it doesn't matter who you are, though. I still wouldn't wish it on anybody. The pain of it. In the end, when you work it out, when you figure out how to remove this filter, the BPD filter I've been talking about, when you learn how to navigate your thoughts, when you learn how to collect data from the outside world and not have emotion attached to it, you can make the best of decisions and you can have a really great life. What do I mean by data? Data, as I often use that term, is information that we receive from the outside world. You're moving through life, you're receiving data of all types. You are receiving conversational data from people in your life who are talking to you. You are receiving performance data, whether it's work or what people think about the job you've been doing, whatever that may be. You're receiving data from people who are telling you what they think about you directly, your kids maybe, for instance, your parents. You're receiving data on the road when you're driving to work, the way that people are interacting with you on the road. You're receiving data all over the place all the time. Data in the form of facial expressions with the people that are in front of you or in the room. You know what I mean? What do you do with that data? That's where a lot of the problems come, and that's where we need to start attacking it from the root level. I teach something called interventive emotional skills through my coaching. And the reason it's called interventive emotional skills is because oftentimes the only point where you can really intervene to stop an episode, to stop a split, to stop symptoms from developing is when you notice emotional content has built. That's when you use the skills in order to divert from this emotional content developing into something much worse, okay? That's why it's called interventive emotional skills. That said, you could go deeper, because once you get better, once you get into full remission, which means no episodes, no splits, no episodes, no splits, no symptoms. Sorry about that. You don't really practice the skills that much anymore. I very rarely find myself using the skills, okay? It's because I adopted perspective changes, of which totally trump having to use any of the skills. And those perspective changes go a little bit deeper, eliminating a lot of the triggers. So you're handling the triggers to the point where they don't trigger you anymore. So there's no need to intervene at an emotional level if you never experience emotional discomfort. And the only way to get ahead of that is to get ahead of the triggers altogether. You can't get rid of the surface level triggers, but you certainly can understand how to identify that I feel right now unimportant or unheard. 2 examples of triggers that we often feel. You see what I mean? I now know that I'm important, so I don't have the unimportant trigger any longer. That takes perspective change, as well as some validation, some self-validation. But once you get that under your belt, you don't build negative emotional content from feeling unimportant anymore. Your mind has new neural pathways which will fire in lieu of the previous ones, of which would have left you feeling very bad about yourself. Let's see. Just making sure I'm not missing anything here. And feel free to pin as you so please, Amit. Usually we try to avoid pinning so much in the beginning because we have a lesson plan that we like to get out the first 10 to 20 minutes or so. Today's was the BPD Filter, which impacts all of your perspective. I want to make note here that it's also an introspective situation. The BPD filter isn't just about the data that you collect from the outside world. It's also about the data that you believe about yourself. So that negative self-talk that's going on in the background, that's going to further perpetuate the BPD filter. It's going to keep it in place. And it is designed to hold you down. It is designed to hold you down. Man, it's unbelievable to me when I started actually improving, when I took it super seriously and I started getting better rapidly. One of the things I noticed was how unbelievable it was that I was, how distorted my thinking was. I couldn't believe how deep it infiltrated my thoughts. When I actually admitted, when I grew to full awareness and I said, okay, this is a major problem. How is this impacting my life? And I turned around and I said something to my partner. I realized it was impacting how I was talking to my partner. Then I realized it was impacting how she responded to me. The second she responded to me, I felt judged or I felt criticized. I didn't feel good enough. Her response wasn't what I thought it would be. You know, I realized it impacted how I felt about doing my work. I realized it impacted whether or not I wanted to get out of bed. I realized it impacted what happened before I went to sleep. I realized that BPD, the filter, was in my dreams. I was having dreams that were curated based on my BPD mind. I mean, that's how deep. In my dreams, I was displaying BPD properties and BPD thoughts, BPD actions, BPD triggers and feelings. That's how deep it is. It's in the subconscious. Now, only 35% of your brain or so is even functioning when you're sleeping. That's on purpose. That's the body trying to recharge and learn how to encode memory, and it only remembers the important stuff and all of that. But yet BPD is even present inside my dreams. And I'm thinking, what the hell? I wake up and I instantaneously feel crummy about myself. I instantly, right away, am telling myself how not good enough I am. The moment I'm awake. And then it keeps going all day long. There's no point in making this bed. You're worthless, just a loser anyway, and you might end up crawling back in there. What's the point in making the bed? You don't have to take care of yourself. No need to get a haircut today. Nobody's going to see you. You're just going to stay inside. There's no point. You know what I mean? I'm on my way to work. The guy that cuts me off, it's because I'm terrible and not good enough, and the world is, I'm unlucky. The world's out to get me. The reason that the cashier is giving me a hard time in the Starbucks line is because it's my fault, or it's their fault, but you know what I mean? It's somebody's fault. It couldn't just be that it takes a little bit of extra time to make a mocha latte or whatever, right? Couldn't be something simple. And of course, not everybody experiences this. From your perspective, you are the deepest, most attacked victim out there, right? You're the most attacked. I'm going to go ahead and roll through this here to make sure I haven't missed anything. Good morning to Elizabeth's kid. Glad to have you. Good morning, Bruce. Martha says, I keep fantasizing of leaving my husband and kids to live alone because I'm tired of always being triggered. Exactly. A lot of our go-to answer is to isolate, but that's not going to solve the problem, guys. Isolating, there's something to be said about space and time, of course. But isolating yourself from the outside world is not going to fix this issue. If you picked yourself up and put you on an island, you'd be depressed. But, and you're right, you wouldn't be as triggered, but who wants to live that way? The answer is understanding how to get ahead of the triggers. Well, welcome, Allison. Glad you're here. I'm sorry that you have the condition, but you're in the right place. Vitality says, I feel so many people I encounter in my work seem to fit regardless. Well, maybe if you mean seem to fit the characteristics of BPD, there's yes, and I think your work is to help people in general, right? So you're encountering people who have mental illness, for instance. A lot of people fit this condition, and for sure the age, the demographic variables don't really matter at all. It's all genetic and environmental. So you either have the genes or you don't, or you were environmentally activated or you weren't, usually both. You're very welcome, Fierce. Martha says, I made it 30 days without using alcohol to cope with these extreme emotions, but I'm exhausted. Alcohol, substances, there's only so much I could say about that here on TikTok and these lives. I've noticed they really don't like that topic too much, so I try to steer away from it. If you are suffering, please do reach out to me. Click the profile button, click the email button, shoot me an email, tell me your story, that kind of thing. Let me know a little bit about what's going on. I will say that the substances aren't the actual problem. The substances are your inappropriate solution to the problems that are your life. Your life must get better, so you no longer want to use the substances as the coping mechanism. It's the only way out of it. I never tell somebody, stop drinking, because they're not going to stop if I tell them to stop. And I also typically recommend not counting days. Unlike, I've done all the AA stuff, and I don't know. I mean, AA is great if that's working for you. Hey, go for it. But signing up for showing up to meetings the entire rest of my life and having sponsors that I have to check in with just to make sure that I'm good. I mean, it sounds awfully like trying to have a permanent parent, and I kind of always looked at it as like a dry drunk sort of situation. The counting the days, I always discourage that. People are like, well, I'm 60 days without, congratulations on the achievement, but at the same time, we're 60 days until we aren't. And then all of a sudden it's back to day one again. Much better, in my opinion, just to find substitutes that are healthy to where you don't think and don't want it anymore. I was full-blown alcoholic for many, many years. Very tough. Very tough. There was some stuff that just got pinned that disappeared. I don't know if we're having an issue with the pinning. Some of it goes up and some of it comes down really quick. I don't know what's up with that, but maybe it's a latency thing. We're doing our best, that's for sure. LOL says, what are some good ways people with BPD can help with breakups and feelings of loneliness like that? Well, here's one thing I'll say right off the bat. Until you understand what this condition actually is, until you actually figure out the superpower that BPD really is, and exactly where your place is in the world having this condition, it feels pretty lonely. And there's no amount of explaining this condition to someone else. There's no amount of walking them through what you're going through. There's no amount of trying to help other people understand this condition that will actually fix that for you. This is an example of one of the places where you will not feel lonely. A place where lots of other people have it and everybody says, yeah, I get it, I understand that. That's one of the reasons my coaching program works, is because I had it. I had the condition. And I'm in the trenches with you. But beyond that, I tried desperately to explain it to people, and you can't. They're never going to understand what it's like to have it unless they experience it themselves. So I'd focus less on that, less on trying to get validation from the world, and instead shift your perspective to giving validation, real validation. Focus on doing things for other people, helping other people, making other people's lives better. And you will naturally start to grow into the new you, of which understands their position in life as a giver, not a taker. That's part of the answer. Michael says, good morning, Michael. What about the impulsive behaviors? Easiest way to regulate the impulsive behaviors. So impulsive behaviors, it's a very wide topic because you have a lot of different impulsivities that can manifest as a part of BPD. On the light end, you might just have, I react very quickly. I react aggressively. I react by withdrawing very fast. You might have some SH in there. Can't really talk about that too much here. Or some, unaliving kind of thoughts. Can't really talk about that stuff either. Those are on the more serious end. Then you have things like quitting your job on the spot because you got upset at something your boss said or you felt unappreciated. Another huge trigger for us. You have threatening to leave relationships, threatening divorce, packing your bags and leaving. You have reckless driving. You have gambling. You have unsafe, unprotected intimacy. You have spending sprees. You have substances. There's a lot of impulsivities. So it's hard to hit that with just one general broad answer because it manifests so differently across the board. I would say that understanding the difference between reaction and response is one of the number one broader perspective changes that you might need. And that is that they're not just separated by time. Everybody thinks that the difference between reacting and responding is that you take time. That's not just it. You take time, but it's what you do in the time that makes the response better than the reaction. You investigate the emotional content, where it came from, where it might have originally come from in your life, because you're not really that upset about what just happened, because we all agree that the reactions are unreasonable, right? So where did it come from? At what point in your life did you first get disrespected to where this is such a big deal now? I would analyze the intent of the people involved, because most of the time there's good intent. And even if they aren't good intentions, most of the time you can kind of figure out why they would have done or said something. And the more you investigate that, the more you realize they're projecting. I would have empathy for anybody else involved, really investigate and dive deeper into imagining being that person, imagining being the other people involved and what they must be thinking and going through, because it isn't all about you. We always think it's all about us, right? And then, of course, you need to focus on the perspective changes that get you ahead of the triggers, because once you dismantle the disrespect trigger, for instance, and you realize that I will never be disrespected again, even if somebody tries to disrespect me, I won't ever feel that emotional response from that. You won't have to worry about reacting, and your impulsivities will start to vanish. So those are the things I would say. Yes. Trying to make sure I touch base on everything. We're kind of all over the place this morning. It's a little bit tough to keep up here. Good morning, AJ. Yeah, I'm not sure where we are, Amit, by the way. I was trying to keep up with it because I think we had some pinning issues, but it's entirely up to you because they're scattered. Michael says, do people want to be better, and can someone become addicted to the high of it? Well, as humans, we are attracted to things that bring us dopamine, oxytocin. Usually those are the highlights of a normal person's life, right? A neurotypical person. For somebody who has BPD, we have lower opioid levels naturally, scientifically proven, when compared to the neurotypical person. So this leaves us feeling very terrible all the time, basically, is the idea. So we will become attracted to any type of thing, any type of activity, any type of interaction, of which is going to generate anything at all that fills the gap of us feeling very poorly about ourselves. That can include things that produce adrenaline, for instance. So we won't just be attracted to stuff like substances. We'll also be attracted to fighting with our partner. And it's subconscious. You don't really want to fight with your partner, but you realize that your body is craving a chemical that changes the way you feel about yourself that you normally get a couple times a week. So if you're trying desperately not to fight with your partner, for instance, but that adrenaline you get from how terrible and rocky things get actually makes you feel a little bit more alive, more than you ever felt, otherwise, you're going to naturally be inclined to get sparked up a little easier. And you could definitely get addicted to that, absolutely. Even feeling bad about yourself, you can get addicted to. Glitter says, how do we stop reacting to things that trigger us? Any tips? First, you have to figure out exactly what it is. Exactly what it is that's triggering you. I mean, that's essential. That's why, generally speaking, after the second session with you, if you're in my coaching program, I will draw for you what we call an IES symptom map. The symptom map is something I created as a way for us to be able to put your condition on one sheet of paper so you can kind of see everything about it all on one sheet of paper. How the symptoms are instigated by the triggers, what triggers instigate what symptoms connect to what symptoms. It's important to have a understanding of this because in order to get ahead, we're really trying to stop the episodes and the splits first, right? And to do that, we have to diminish the symptoms. To diminish the symptoms, we have to analyze the emotional content that's created from the triggers. So you have triggers leading to symptoms, symptoms bashing into each other, creating episodes and splits. The more triggers that you identify and are able to eliminate, the less likely they are to create symptoms. So your feeling unappreciated trigger, for instance, might lead to a few different symptoms. Anytime you feel unappreciated, you may end up prone to feeling impulsive. You may feel prone to taking it out on yourself, SH, stuff like that. You may be prone to a mood swing, right? Feeling bad about yourself. So those three symptoms might be triggered from feeling unappreciated. Depending upon the day, the mood, the circumstances, the people involved, all of that, you may be more likely to go to one or the other of the symptoms or all of them. But if you figure out how to feel appreciated no matter what, that trigger disappears off the map, and now you're less impulsive. Now you're less likely to take it out on yourself. Now you're less likely to have mood swings. So then you look at mood swings and you say, what other triggers are hitting mood swings? Let me hit that trigger and figure out how to get over the feeling unimportant trigger. When you figure out that trigger and that one disappears off the map, a couple other symptoms might disappear. Eventually there's nothing left, and you're like a Zen Buddhist monk, you know what I mean? And it's not that difficult to get there, which is why the BPD remission program is a 2-month program. That's why it's possible to get better in 2 months or less. It's because it's not actually that hard to get through that. Phoenix says, does the symptom map work for non-BPD people? The symptom map can work for anyone. IES was designed for BPD, but I actually work with people who have all types of conditions and all types of issues. I like to focus more on behavior. It's not so much about the labels, despite my specialty being what I suffered from and, BPD. You can fix any behavior that you're not happy with. You have to be able to identify what it is that's bothering you and what those things are doing to you. What type of symptoms are you displaying? What type of behavior is unreasonable? That's what that means. When it comes to mental conditions or mental issues of any kind, whether you have a condition or not, we're really just talking about behaviors that are inappropriate or that are undesirable. You see what I mean? So, yes, it can work for all of that, for sure. And I've had people, by the way, do the remission program who don't have BPD. They just do it because a lot of the stuff that you get out of the remission program would help any normal person. It's just because the problems that we have as BPD people, a lot of people don't realize that these problems are felt by neurotypical people on a regular basis. I mean, they really are. It's just that they're not as extreme in their reactions most of the time. Nobody likes to get broken up with, abandoned, right? Nobody likes to think that their partner's talking to somebody else, whether they are or aren't. The jealousy thing's easy to pick up. Everybody can get irrationally angry, if they're not looking out for the behavior, figuring out how to get ahead of the triggers. And good morning, Sue. I saw you join. The problems are everywhere, and the problems are for everybody. It's just more extreme for us with BPD, and something I often tell my BPD clients is, as you start to get better, you will start to see the cracks in the neurotypical people. Most people are not focused on self-improvement. They're just happy with whatever, and since they fall in social norm, good morning, Nicole, thank you. Since they're in the social norm scale, it's not addressed. Because even though they might be a hothead sometimes, at least they're not throwing TVs out the window. You know what I mean? That could still be improved. Good morning, AJ. Good to see you. Courtney says, how can we sign up for this? I've been thinking I need to get a hold on my mood swings. There is a link in my link tree in my profile, or you could just go to sensitivestability.com. I encourage you to reach out to me, send me an email, send us a DM, tell me you're interested, and tell me a little bit about what you have going on so I can kind of walk you through and guide you a little bit, make sure that you're a great fit for it. I'm very careful in terms of who I choose to work with in this. I can only work with a certain number of people at a time. I have to believe that you have a will to change. I really do. Otherwise, it would be a huge waste of time and money for you. You know what I mean? I have to believe that you are absolutely sick and tired of living the way you are, and that I am able to help you. The vibe has to be right, all of that kind of thing. But if you're serious, then I would love to help any way that I can, and I'll guide you no matter what, okay? But the first step is reaching out, and then I can get you some more information, and we can talk about that. But absolutely, nobody should sit in suffering. There are answers and there are ways out. There are better ways of thinking. There are better ways of responding. There's better ways of doing things. There's better ways of responding to the outside world. I know it feels, especially when you have an extreme case of BPD, I know it feels like you don't have a choice and that things are coming out of nowhere, right? That's 0 to 100. Instantaneously, but I assure you that is not reality. That's not really what's happening. It just feels that way, and I can walk you through all the steps and the process of fixing that. Okay. Perimenopause messes with your mind. Well, there's a lot of different changes in your biology as you mature in life, as age happens. There's a lot of changes to hormones depending upon certain things going on. It's not just menopause. That absolutely will change a lot for you, can exacerbate a lot of the symptoms if you have BPD. Even things like getting pregnant can throw you through a tremendous loop. Losing someone can change. There's a lot that can change your physiological state and exacerbate the condition. That's absolutely true. Even that time of the month for you women out there, that is a little harder. Usually I have noticed that women will report exacerbated symptoms the week before and the first few days of their period, for instance. Those days are usually much harder for women, premenopause. But there's a lot of different things that happen throughout time of which will change you, dramatically change you. And I hate that it's circumstantial in that case, and unpredictable a lot of the times. But that is life, it's unpredictable. So we have to prepare for the unpredictable. Remember all of our talks about expectation versus reality. Amy, good morning. Boyfriend is constantly breaking up with me, always telling me to find another man. Well, if your boyfriend has BPD and he is telling you to find someone else, I can almost guarantee you that's not actually what he wants. And it's probably evident by the next couple days that follow that when he's telling you, please stay. You're not going to leave me, right? Tell me you'll always stay. You won't actually find someone else. It's because we don't feel good enough. We feel worthless. And that's our inappropriate way of seeking validation from you, which is in the enabling category, unfortunately. When you enable that kind of behavior, he'll keep doing it. Because every time he says, I'm going to leave you, you're going to say, no, babe, please don't leave, please stay. And then he feels wanted, he feels loved, he feels cared for. And that's something he needs to be fulfilling himself. He needs to love himself before he can even understand what love is from someone else. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have love from you or that you guys can't be in love or that you can't make it work, okay? I'm by no means saying that. But what I am saying is nothing changes when nothing changes. Nothing changes if nothing changes. So we can only change what we can put our own two hands on. And if he is not in this, if he's not hearing these lives, if he's not watching my videos, if he's not actually pursuing a different way of thinking, he will remain the same, and it will be up to you to influence him. And that's a very tough process, man. That's a very tough process. Some people, you have to wait months trying to influence them indirectly in a healthy way to get them to be on board with opening their mind to even the slightest idea of change. And if you really love someone and you understand this condition, you could do it without sacrificing dignity. It's entirely possible. And part of that process is reducing the emotional weight of the words that are coming out of their mouth. When he's saying, find some other man, in your mind, I would be rolling my eyes like, all right, well, he's just doing it again. Tomorrow he'll feel differently. I'm not going to buy into that. I'm not going to inappropriately validate him. I'll say, I love you. I'm here for you. Let me know when you want to talk. And you back off. You back off a little bit. And that's a scary process, okay? Because it does come with risks. We're famous, BPD people, for going to extremes. So when that doesn't work, we might go a little further. When that doesn't work, we might go a little further. And you have to be strong enough to say, I love this person. I'm not going to give into it. Because if I do, they're just going to keep using me for inappropriate validation. And they'll never experience real love. And they'll never feel good enough. And they'll never get better. Sunflower says, thank you for what you do here every morning. You're appreciated. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. And I appreciate all of you. This condition, it's such a weird thing for me. Half of me, it makes me sick. You know what I mean? The other half, I'm like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And if I could just help people get unsick and into the best thing that ever happened to them, the more people that I can do this for, we are like shining diamonds spread across the world who can make the biggest waves and ripple effects you've ever seen. So you got to just keep helping shine each one up. You know what I mean? You guys can be the examples as well. Carrie, is it just Carrie? Hopefully I pronounced that right. Thank you, Faye. Do you suggest avoiding dating whilst trying to heal in order to fully learn self-love? Look, if you're already single, if you're already in a state where you're single, then you might as well start and get better first. At least get some things under your belt. But I don't think you need to completely withhold from pursuing love. I do think that you need to be pursuing loving yourself and getting right as much as you can first. At least get a few feet moving in the right direction. If you're already in a relationship, you're already in a relationship, you know? Everybody's in a different point of their life. I think the sooner you get on board with a full transformation, the happier you're going to be, the more you're going to be able to offer the world, the more you're going to be able to offer your future partner, because they don't deserve all of the negative coping mechanisms that come with this, right? For this reason, the program that I run, it pre-prepares people for future relationships, and it also focuses on fixing relationships. It doesn't matter what point of your life you're in. But I walk people through as a part of the coaching, whatever it is that they need in order to achieve validation and a happy life. For some people, I double as a dating coach. That doesn't cost extra. I just build it in. For some people, I was a relationship coach for a long time before I became a BPD coach, and I was quite good at that. I'll lace in relationship coaching because that's what they need. You know, some people are struggling to start a business, so I'll coach them in business. I've run over 100 different businesses. Some people need a job. I've helped them make resumes and pursue a job. It doesn't matter what you need. You know, we're all different, and that's what makes this program successful. And that is the fastest way to get to remission, whether you're doing it yourself or with me, is to look at all aspects of your life and take full accountability, full stock, and full responsibility for fixing things. Accountability means, hey, this is wrong and I'm supposed to be the one to fix it. Responsibility is action. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take responsibility for fixing this. You see? That's productivity. Anybody can do it. Trust me, if I could do it, any of you could do it. Kay says, good morning, Kay. I see a psychiatrist for the first time in 6 years since the first time I was diagnosed. Well, anything that anybody's doing here to put yourself in the right direction, the correct direction of getting better, I fully support 100%. I will tell you, I've been in full remission for years. I don't take any meds of any kind. I am completely natural in that regard. I do like to go to a therapist every once in a while to talk about just random things without being judged and have the subjective third party, analyze it. But by no means would I need therapy. I would say, on a regular basis. It's just something that's cathartic and almost like going to the gym or something of that nature. You can get to a place where you're not a slave to some type of routine and people who say things like, well, I've had a therapist for like 6 years, and it's like they're going all the time nonstop. And I'm thinking it's no different than kind of going to AA. It's like you're a slave to the idea that this person is the only thing that can alleviate your pain. We need to be able to learn how to alleviate our pain ourselves, right? Kay says, I'm so scared to be inpatient. Yeah, okay. A new eating disorder. Eating disorders are very comorbid. It is one of the ways that we harm ourselves, right? And it's because we don't feel good enough most of the time. It's also a control thing. It's a coping mechanism because we have control over things like food, for instance. It's really tough. Like UK, my parents didn't believe in even mental health, all right? They didn't even believe in that. So, and the age, being 18 and thinking about this kind of stuff, bravo to you, because most 18-year-olds will not entertain the idea that they need help from anybody else or that they need help at all or that they need to fix any of this stuff. I believe in you. I really do. And I believe that you can wrap your mind around how to get out of this kind of stuff. One of the things I'd say is to show up here every day that you possibly can. We go live Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. US EST. And that's instrumental in moving a lot of people forward, okay? You don't have to be doing everything all at once, but sometimes just doing something is a good step in the right direction. And that's how I approach a lot of things. It's not let's change everything overnight. It's let's focus on what little things we can do right now, today, to make today slightly better than yesterday was. You do that enough, you end up with a satisfying life. You do that enough, you end up with happiness and joy and good memories and better relationships and better rapport with your job and the outside world, a better reputation, not just with the outside world, but with yourself. You have to become somebody who does the things that you want to see yourself doing in the future. And you do that slowly. You don't do that all at one time. You do it slowly. It's about the slow, daily grind of this. It's not about a radical overnight change, even though this journey is epiphany based. As you learn certain things, attending this live, doing the program I do, watching some of the old lives on YouTube, watching some of the stuff I post on TikTok and my channel, you will have epiphanies. You will have these epiphanies. And the epiphanies will change the way you look at yourself and the world and other people and your interaction, your place in it, forever. And it'll happen instantly. It'll happen right away, each time. And you'll never be the same again each time you have one of these epiphanies. There will be moments when you say, I can't believe I've been doing that my whole life. I can't believe I've been doing that. I'm never going to do that again. And then you won't. You won't. And if you've slipped up once or twice, it won't be the same. The magic will be gone. And I say magic like it's a good thing. I mean that element that made you think it was okay before, to act the way you were acting, for whatever it may be, that element will have disappeared. And you won't feel that way. You won't be attracted to it anymore, and you'll see it for the primitive, immature behavior that it is. And you don't want to look immature and primitive to the outside world. And you'll also understand that these things don't ever get you what you want. I mean, they might have seemed like they did. Making threats, for example, people will give in at first, right? But eventually you notice they get sick of it. They get sick of the threats, and finally they're just like, dude, I don't care anymore. You'll lose friends. You'll lose partners. You'll lose family. You'll lose jobs, because nobody wants to be around a loose cannon, right? And you're not actually getting what you want long term out of that. And the only reason that you don't stop it is because you don't know of other ways to get what you want. Thank you, Vitality. If you knew other ways to get what you want, you do it. Because those ways are acceptable. Those ways are within social norm. Those ways aren't frowned upon. Those ways work. And they're rewarded, tremendously rewarded. But you have to be willing to step outside of the box that you've been in. And the hardest part about that is the fear. It's the fear. There's fear behind every change you have to make. That part sucks. I can't stop that for you. You just have to accept that sometimes you have to put the armor on and draw the sword and fight the dragon. It's the only way out. Vitality says some experts have said that talk therapy just ingrains the trauma. What's your opinion? Well, I think that's a diverse, subjective kind of situation, because, I could have my friend who's a plumber provide you talk therapy, and it won't be as effective as somebody who's been doing talk therapy for 35 years, for instance. Now, that person won't be as effective for BPD, for instance, as somebody who suffered from BPD. So what I do in coaching is very similar to talk therapy, kind of. I mean, we're doing tech support around the clock, and I'm walking you through your problems. I'm talking to you about it, right? We're having sessions where I'm explaining in an hour everything I need you to know to get over the hurdle, and I'm quite good at it, and you move quite quickly through the things that are problems, but it's because I suffered from it, and I got out of it, and I know exactly what you're thinking, and exactly how to relay it, and what I would have needed to hear in order to beat it myself. So what I do is very similar to talk therapy, and it's extremely effective. I mean, unbelievably effective in changing people's lives forever, and I can see it on their faces as I'm telling them stuff. I can see the change as they're registering it. I can see their facial expressions of these changes. I would say that it's effective if it's done right. But I would also say that there are people who say, I've had a great therapist for 9 years. Well, yeah, I got a lot of trauma. And it's affecting them every day. And it's like they're using their therapist as a sounding board, right? And they're not getting over it. So I think there's a lot of different ways of going about it. I've always had the perspective that I'm not a sounding board, I'm a catalyst for change. And my goal is to get the client off the Ferris wheel, not keep it going 365, 24/7. It's the goal when you see me, in my head, is for you to never have to see me again. I mean, although, I don't mean it in a mean way. Obviously, I'm more than happy to see you. You know what I mean? But I'm saying the goal is you shouldn't have to need me for the entire rest of your life. That's counterproductive. That's keeping people in the trauma. I'll be honest about the trauma too. Everybody who signs up for my program, they all think instantaneously that we're going to just instantly talk about your childhood trauma. That doesn't usually come up until much later in the program, and it comes up naturally as appropriate. My focus when you get on board is usually what immediate behavioral impacts can I make? What immediate changes can I make in this person's life right away? We need some wins under our belt today. We need some wins right now. And we try to get as many of the wins that we can until we hit one topic where you're struggling. You can't take my advice the way you normally would. That's when I know we've hit a hurdle. That's when I know we focus on the trauma. So please do reach out to me if you are struggling with this condition or you have a loved one who is struggling and you don't know what to do. I would love to give you some guidance. I would love to walk you through it. I really would. Please click the profile button, click the email button, and tell me a little bit about what's going on. I personally respond to all my emails, and I will absolutely get back to you and guide you whatever way I can. For those of you who have been helping with my PhD survey, again, I want to thank you, and the more the better. We are trying to show the world that it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, you very well could have BPD. It's not just a white female condition, although I still could use some more white females doing the survey. I require a ton of participants, so the more the better, guys. It's very helpful. We are hitting the end of our live today. I want to remind you all that we go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST here on TikTok. If you can't attend some mornings, or you just need a little bit extra, or maybe this was a one-off and normally you can't make it at all, I want to remind you that we do post all of our lives. Thank you, Jill. I appreciate that. We post all of our lives on YouTube. There's a bunch on there, so you can go back and kind of select them based on topic. That they're all very neatly organized, or labeled, rather. Amit does all of the YouTube postings for us. He also moderates. Thank you for being here every morning, Amit. And thank you for the gifts, guys, that you've been giving throughout the show. They go towards the advertising budget to push this live out there and try and get some more people who need the help. As I always say, you never know who's out there right now who badly needs to hear the messages that we share here. Each morning, 7 a.m. US EST, will be here Monday through Friday, sharing a different topic about borderline personality disorder. And I will walk you through it as best I can every morning. But if you're suffering, don't suffer alone. Show up, watch the lives, interact, ask questions. Friday's a really good day for questions. That's our free day. That's like our question answer day. So there's not usually a topic on Friday. Instead, I'm a little bit more in tune with the chat, and Amit's posting a little bit more. So you get seen a little bit easier on that day. So if you've had some questions and you want to get them out, definitely show up Friday. I want you all to have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow morning bright and early. Thanks for coming, guys.